First item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance, and the Chian family will be is invited to come up and lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would all stand. The microphone on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to provide a little history on why this family was invited to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. About a year, or last October, the Campbell Police Department responded to a medical emergency at the Campbell Community Center when Ryan, their oldest son, collapsed due to cardiac arrest. Life-saving efforts were administered, including the use of the automated external defibrillator, also known as AED. In appreciation for saving their son's life, the Chian family wanted to make a donation toward AEDs to the city to help continue to save the lives of those in our community. So with that, I would like to invite our police chief, Gary Berg, to provide some additional information, and we'll be making a presentation at the end of the item. Thank you, Chief Berg.
Good evening, Mayor, honorable council members. As you may know, this isn't the first time that we've come before you talking about a life being saved by an AED. One several years ago, including one of our own police officers who was saved by AED. And like you said, this past October, Ryan, who through the efforts of our Campbell lifeguards and first responders and the use of an AED, he's standing here with us today. And what's really exciting about this donation is it supports this new technology that we're bringing to the city of Campbell in a partnership with a new company called Avive. And you may have seen as you walked in today, they were delivered today, our brand new Avive AEDs, which are being stationed throughout city facilities and in all of our Campbell Police patrol vehicles. And as you know, I like talking about technology and how we can leverage technology to make a very difficult job a little bit easier. And the beauty of this technology is it gives our officers, our employees, the public, the tools to save lives. And the technology that's embedded within these new AEDs are going to allow us to know when emergencies are happening, to coordinate responses, and really be a force multiplier when it comes to saving lives in the Campbell community. And I just wanted to, on behalf of the entire Campbell Police Department, thank the Chian family for their generous donation. Recommend that the council accept that donation in furtherance of this exciting new program that we're bringing to the city. And we've already started having conversations with county EMS personnel and how this technology is interconnected and can be used throughout our region to help save more lives, because it's very clear that with this technology, we have proof standing before us right now that this technology has a major impact on the lives of all of our community members. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'd like to close out by thanking council and especially thanking the Chian family for their generous donation in helping us achieve this.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll open it up to council for discussion on the item or comments. Councilmember Furtado.
Yes, I wanted to also add my thanks and appreciation for this donation. It means a lot to us. And we all understand now the importance of very early CPR, pushing hard and pushing fast until an AED is available. And I think the chief summarized it very well, that automatic external defibrillators do save lives because of their very quick action and their ability, of course, to analyze the rhythm and determine whether a shock is necessary. So I also suggest that we publicize the locations in the city where AEDs are located so that we can send someone directly to a nearby location, or that it be readily available by some type of advertisement so that it can be accessed very quickly. But we appreciate this very much, and thank you.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Yes, I want to just really give you a great thank you for donating this to the city, and we look forward to many years of you guys coming before us. Thank you.
Member Lopez.
Yeah, I also just want to express my deep appreciation for taking a very difficult and painful experience and giving back to the community in this way. And I'm so grateful, as I know you are, that things turned out the way it did. But your being here really exemplifies, I mean, you exemplify the spirit of what Campbell is all about, the volunteerism and the service of people who just get engaged in making their community better. So thank you so much for being that and for your example.
Councilmember Scazola.
And I just want to echo my fellow council members' words, but also add, I did a little bit of research and it was pretty shocking to me. It's amazing that if all communities across America did kind of what we're doing right now and optimizing the availability of AEDs within your community, it could save up to 50,000 or more lives across the nation. So I'm glad that we're one of those communities. So thank you very much for that.
And I'll echo all the comments that have been made, and again, appreciate your willingness to pay it forward and support our community and potentially help someone else that may be in need in the future. Is there any member of the public that would wish to comment on this item? With that, I'll entertain a motion from the council to accept the donation.
Make a motion that we accept the donation of the AED.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Landry and a second by Councilmember Furtado to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. And now I'd like to come down and present you with a certificate for leading the Pledge of Allegiance today. Okay, we'll move to communications and petitions. We have none this evening, and that brings us to oral requests. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the City Council are requested, but not required to complete a speaker's card. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. The law generally prohibits the council from discussion or taking action on such items. However, the council may instruct staff accordingly regarding oral requests. The first request I have this evening is Jacob Silver. You come to the podium. You have 2 minutes, please.
Hey everybody, I'm Jacob Sterling Silver. I am working with some combat vets. I'm not a vet, but we started up a new nonprofit trying to help out the isolation suicide issue that's going on. I'm sure you've all heard the numbers, 22 a day. Sometimes they say it's 17. There's actual new data that's climbing quite a bit. They're not counting addiction issues or DUIs, I don't believe. So it could be quite a bit bigger than that. So what we're trying to do is just get guys out of the house, try something different. We got to change tactics. If the numbers are climbing and we're throwing all this money and effort at it, it's not changing anything. We're trying something different. So I'll give you a couple examples. One guy was a little depressive. I put him in the truck. We did a drive-by barbecue, handed out some free barbecue at Hunter Liggett. And the guy was a different man. He trained at that base before he's deployed, and he was telling me war stories on the way back. And somehow it changed his morale quite a bit. And there was another friend of mine that was a depressed veteran. He didn't look good. I said, get in the truck, we're going skydiving, and he was not depressed when he hit the ground. So these little things are starting to work, and we're just trying to do anything and everything we can do. The man on the right side of that picture is one of the first 100 Marines after the towers fell into Afghanistan. So if I notice that they're a little off, I kind of funnel them towards him. And then if he says they're a little off, then we try to just kind of be there for him, do some peer support, and then actually find some services for them. But there seems to be a disconnect in between them walking into the VA and getting some help. I just heard of a story today where a mixed up veteran walked in and just didn't have the patience to sit down and do the 2 hours of paperwork. So we try to sit there and deal with them until they can get to that point. And we're looking for all sorts of volunteers, any sort of help we can get. If you guys know anybody who wants to work on a nonprofit committee, send them my way. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just an iron worker. But we can take any sort of help we can get. I do know this is working, and we hope we can get some support.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Furtado.
Jacob, I just wanted to thank you for being here tonight and for talking about this program and what you do. I think it is very worthwhile. I think the nation is finally has begun to realize the significance of the number of suicides per day of veterans and military. And I'm a veteran myself. And we do have in Campbell here, the Campbell Veterans Memorial Foundation, and I will share this with them. And we have the opportunity to write a story for our local newspaper on a monthly basis. And I'll ask the person of our organization who handles that to contact you perhaps, and we can have something printed in our local newspapers. So thanks for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I next have speaker cards from several people, and a few people wish to delegate their time to one designated speaker. We typically do not do that, but I will allow it under this instance. And so Amy Taylor has delegated her speaking time to Ken Johnson. So I'm going to invite Ken Johnson to come up and speak, and I'll allow 3 minutes for you to speak, Ken.
Should be able to get it all in that time. I appreciate that.
Could you speak up a little bit, Ken?
Yeah, just the new microphone now. Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Ken Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the Campbell Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for your time today. I'm very clear that you can't make any decisions or have a discussion about this, but I wanted at least to come before you and represent the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Campbell Business Association as it relates to that paid parking lot, the removal of the paid parking lot downtown. In a situation like this, there's lots of emotions and things, so I'm going to try to just stick to the facts as we go through this information here, and I appreciate the extra time. I hope we have an agreement that if I cover it all, no one else will need to speak. So the property is located at 323 East Campbell Avenue. It's owned by Mr. Javier Sanchez, and it's actually 2 parcels of land. Between 2012 and 2017, it was fenced off, and if you were here then, you remember it was blight. Orchard City Parking leased the property, received an approval, and developed it into a paid parking lot that we've come to know. They received a 7-year temporary use permit, which expired in December of 2022. In an effort to provide full disclosure, both the Chamber and the DCBA work with that parking lot for our events downtown, either to rent it or to have it, use it in some form, as has always been the case. So we do have some vested interest in this as well. I've met with both the city manager and the community development director, and I do appreciate their guidance. They've been helpful. What I've learned is they're limited by ordinances, as is the planning staff. So what the ordinances are is what we have to go by, and that puts us in a difficult situation. The date that this took place, that the ordinance change took place, was the information we got took place in at a city council meeting in 2020, February 2020. And there was discussion at that meeting about making it pedestrian friendly for downtown businesses. So went back and watched the meeting. I'd go to them all, and I don't remember any discussion about the parking lot being not a use anymore in downtown Campbell. And in watching the video, was never any discussion about that. The discussion was some confusion about 2 lists that were created, one for downtown, one for outside, and what were allowed uses and not allowed uses, but never any discussion or any reference to the parking lots not being an allowed use anymore downtown. On one of the charts, by the way, it referenced that parking wasn't allowed use. On the other chart, it said it was not. So for those of you in the council at the time, I'd ask you to go back and consider, did you know when you passed the ordinance that night that you were voting on to remove the paid parking lot, the parking lot downtown? My guess is you probably didn't, just as I didn't, when there was never any discussion about that. So what we've done at this point is the only possible way to rectify this situation is, I'm going to hopefully get this right, a master general plan amendment, which could cost the owners of that property somewhere around $50,000 to push that through as a use, to be another use again. Everyone agrees that the development of that property is probably the best thing that could happen, but Mr. Sanchez is not going to sell the property. Mr. Sanchez is not going to develop the property. And so today it's really going to become one of two things. It's going to become a way to, we can find a way to make it work, or it's going to get fenced off again and it won't be used by anybody until Mr. Sanchez passes away. We didn't know at the time about COVID, couldn't have anticipated that, but what led to was the park that's for the restaurant, which took away 10 spots downtown for parking today. And closing the parking lot will result in an additional 28 parking spaces downtown going away. Orchard City received notice from the code enforcement that all associated improvements to the parking lot must be removed by September 12th, or they'll begin to receive fines of $1,000 per day. They've operated in good faith. That was been on my discussion. As long as we continue to operate in good faith, that we might have some flexibility. My concern is that once that first piece of equipment comes out, it's no longer a parking lot. It clearly will not be a parking lot going forward.
And if you could wrap it up, because I'm going to allow Sheldon to speak.
Okay. I'm going to let Sheldon talk about the survey that we did. That's the one group that is most relevant to this. That's the downtown businesses. Again, so what I'm hoping is, by the way, when we've exhausted everything to make that potentially that it's not going to happen, Orchard City is prepared to do a compliance letter that says when things will be removed. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. So just for the record, Brooke Ramirez and Mike Van Sant have filled out cards but want to delegate their time to Sheldon Chang. So if you want to come up, and I'll give you 3 minutes, Sheldon.
Thank you very much. My name is Sheldon Chang. I've been with the Downtown Campbell Business Association for over 20 years. I've also run downtowncampbell.com and Downtown Campbell social media for the same 20 years. I've had a special relationship with, besides Downtown Campbell, the lot in question, because I also helped produce Sundown Cinema, the outdoor movie series that was in Downtown Campbell for 9 years. And over the course of that time, I had many conversations with the lot's owner, Javier Sanchez, over the future of his lot. And I often got the distinct feeling that he was either unwilling or unable to understand the circumstances around it and was just set on exactly what he wanted, and that was going to be my way or the highway. Ken mentioned that we took a survey. I can make the results of this. I'll make the results of the survey available to everyone on the council. We asked the owners of businesses in downtown Campbell 2 questions. The questions were that, were you aware that this parking lot was going to revert back to being not a parking lot in 2023? Only a handful of people actually knew that. And I'm not actually sure they knew, or they just answered the question wrong. Most people would like to see that the lot is preserved in its current state until an impasse can be broken with the owner of the lot. And based on my past conversations with Mr. Sanchez, I think that's exactly what we're going to return back to. Is we're going to return back to an impasse with that lot where it's not going to make our city more walkable. It's just going to give us a big giant hole in the middle of downtown where we don't want one. Where that lot is going to again become the public restroom that it became from 2013 to 2017 when Orchard City parking was installed into there. And that's actually all I have for this. I will send out the survey to all the city council members, which will include the comments that we collected from businesses in downtown Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon. And I just want to say, express our appreciation to all of the DCBA people that are here to voice their concerns about this. Again, it's unagendized item and we can't comment on it. And really the best course of action going forward is to work with staff, with the city manager's office and the community development department, and they can discuss and provide some background and some information going forward. And that's really the best way to handle this. But again, thank you all for coming. And I believe, is there anyone else in the chamber that wishes to speak on an oral request? And I believe we have one online person. Is there somebody, Andrea?
Hello. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. This is, you have 2 minutes to speak on your request.
Hi, so my name is Vaibhav. I'm a resident of Campbell and a proud father of a 4-day-old daughter. I just became a father 4 days ago. Like any father, I would want to make sure my daughter is in the best of health. Unfortunately, we have a major secondhand smoke issue from our neighbor. I live in a multi-unit housing, and our neighbor smokes on the patio. It is more of a problem in the summer because we can't even keep the windows open to mitigate some of this heat that we've been having. So there's really no recourse in this case. Well, I found out that the Santa Clara County has an ordinance that it passed 9 years ago that bans smoking in multi-unit housing. And so I called the sheriff's department to help. But they told me that while they can enforce this ban in general, they cannot do it in Campbell because the city of Campbell permits smoking in secondhand housing, in multi-unit housing. So this to me is really backwards because I don't understand a reason why we permit something that's a known carcinogen and a major health risk. So my ask from the city is to first try and find a way that either the Santa Clara County sheriff or the city police can have a quick chat with my neighbor. I'm sure he will understand once he hears something from the sheriff or the police. And secondly, I want the city to catch up with the Santa Clara County and other cities in the Bay Area and pass this ordinance that bans multi-unit housing, secondhand smoking in multi-unit housing. I hope I'm being coherent that I want them to ban ban smoking in multi-unit housing because it's a major health risk. It's been proven that it's a carcinogen, and my infant and elderly people in the house I feel they're at risk. We can't really do anything. Talking to the neighbor hasn't really helped so far. So I really request your help with this.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
I just wanted to know if we can have staff follow up on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will have a city staff follow up with you. Did you hear me? Okay. Okay. Well, in any case, if the city manager could follow up tomorrow. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to mayor's announcements. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to the annual State of the City address. Please join me as I discuss the city's recent accomplishments and information on upcoming projects, including Measure O. The State of the City address will be held at the Orchard City Banquet Hall on Wednesday, September 13th. Doors open at 5:30 p.m. with the event beginning promptly at 6 o'clock. Please RSVP to mayor.stateofthecity@campbell.gov by Wednesday, September 6th. All are welcome to stop by the Campbell Police Department on Saturday, September 16th from noon to 2 p.m. for an exclusive look at the equipment, technology, and more. There will be canine and drone demonstrations. Learn more about our SWAT, Crisis Negotiation Team, and the Mobile Emergency Operations Center. The Caregivers Count Conference is an annual virtual event designed for families and friends caring for loved ones. This conference features professional speakers covering wide-ranging topics to support caregivers. The conference will be held over 4 consecutive weeks on September 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th, and will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. For more information or to register, please visit caregiverscount.net. The Downtown Campbell Business Association is hosting its 2023 Fall Wine Walk from 6 to 9 p.m. on Thursday, September 21st. Go to downtowncampbell.com for additional details and ticket information. Volunteers are needed to pick up litter. Participate in the California Coastal Cleanup on Saturday, September 23rd from 9 to 12 p.m. For additional information and site locations, please visit cleanacreek.org. Join the fun, meet your neighbors, make some money, and keep those items from going into the landfill. Be sure to sign up for the City of Campbell's annual garage sale on Saturday, October 14th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more information or to register, please call 408-866-2145. And finally, the Campbell Museum Foundation is recruiting new members to serve on the board of directors. Help preserve history in the community through fundraising events, special projects, and outreach. For more information, please visit campbellmuseums.com. Next, we'll move to the consent calendar. Yes. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney, for reminding me.
Mayor Bybee and members of the council, as you are aware, in closed session, the council unanimously voted to approve a settlement agreement in the case of House Keys Resource and Education Center versus Garland Yee, and direct the city manager to sign the necessary documents to implement the settlement.
Thank you, Bill. So now we're on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion of the city council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a request is made by a member of the council, city staff, or a member of the public. Any person wishing to speak on any item on the consent calendar should ask to have the item removed from the consent calendar prior to the time the council votes to approve. If removed, the item will be discussed in the order in which it appears. Are there any council members or staff or members of the public that would like to pull an item? Councilmember Furtado?
I'd like to pull items number 13 and 14.
Any other council members or members of the public? Okay, I would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 2 through 12.
I'll make a motion to approve 2 through 12.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Landry and a second by Councilmember Lopez to approve the consent calendar items 2 through 12. May we have roll call?
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Okay, so that takes us to item 14, which is 13, authorization of an amendment to an existing joint exercise of powers agreement and cooperation agreement with the County of Santa Clara to undertake or assist in the undertaking of activities pursuant to Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act. Councilmember
I
Furtado?
just wanted to pull this briefly to indicate this is in part related to the Community Development Block Grant Program, which has been very successful for us, and the organizations that were able to help with those funds benefit greatly by it, and it's good for our city to do this type of work. And I just wanted to thank the Civic Improvement Commission for their work that they still continue, and also actually commend the city for continuing this important program.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I'll move the adoption of item 13.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Furtado and a second by Councilmember Lopez to approve the staff recommendation on item 13. Roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola. Aye. Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Item 14 is to authorize the execution of a contract for the preparation of an affordable housing and commercial linkage fees nexus study.
Yes, thank you. I asked that this item be pulled also. I kind of have a comment or two and a question. I realize that approval of this item is simply to authorize the preparation of a study, the community linkage fee study. I just wanted, however, to express my concern about this from the perspective of linkage fees, especially for very small businesses, the majority of which is what we have in the city, I think can be quite a burden for anyone wanting to establish a new business with a small number of employees. Should something like this go, not the study, but subsequent action that would result in some type of additional fee. And I'm concerned about that. I could understand it for larger businesses that employ a lot more people who presumably then would be traveling here from other cities, and for which this may be, appropriate. But I'm just wondering if we have any instructions that sort of address that issue, and I'd appreciate any comments that you might have.
Sure. Rob Eastwood, Community Development Director. Thank you, Councilmember Furtado. The action for you tonight is simply to execute a contract with BAE to do the Nexus study. It doesn't bind the council in any ways to a decision to adopt a fee. Typically, as part of these, we would do a couple of things to give council alternatives. First, the Nexus study will provide you with the nexus and the ability to adopt a fee, probably at varying levels. We'll look at our neighboring jurisdictions to see what comparable fees are. And finally, there would likely be a fiscal impact study or a study on economic development to see what the impacts are. Again, at this time, it simply allows the consultant to prepare the Nexus studies that gives you the option of adopting a fee. You're not bound to adopt that fee, but we anticipate having alternatives before the council on likely the size of the fee and perhaps the types of businesses that it could affect.
At this stage, whether you know whether other surrounding cities have done this or what the status is of smaller cities, say within Senator County so far.
I don't know at the granular level. I'd say it is generally industry standard for many cities of our size or larger to have a commercial impact leakage fee. Typically what I've seen is the nexus will be for a city to charge a much larger fee than a city actually applies. The jurisdiction I used to work for adopted a fee, and I know cities such as Mountain View, I believe Sunnyvale and a few other have fees. And again, typically you have in your nexus studies the ability to charge a range which goes high and low. But normally cities benchmarking against other cities to be competitive will charge a much lower fee than what the nexus is for. But having a commercial linkage fee is not atypical of many jurisdictions in the area.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve item 14 on the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Vice Mayor Landry and a second by Councilmember Scazola to approve the staff recommendation on item 14. Roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Next, we move to public hearings and introduction of ordinances. Members of the public may be allotted up to 2 minutes to comment on any public hearing item. Applicants, appellants, and their representatives may be allotted up to a total of 5 minutes for opening statements and up to a total of 3 minutes maximum for closing statements. Items recommended for continuance are subject to council's consent at the meeting. Item 15 is a public hearing to consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a conditional use permit with site and architectural review to allow reconstruction of a Shell gasoline service station with an expanded convenience store, including off-site alcohol beverage sales, a drive-through car wash, and 24-hour operational hours, and a tree removal permit of all on-site trees for property located at 570 East Hamilton Avenue. And I want to ask first if there are any disclosures that council members would like to make regarding this item. If not, Community Development Director Rob Eastwood will do a short presentation.
Very short. I'm saying in lieu of Daniel Fallon, the senior planner who would normally present this. We did receive a request this morning, I believe it's in your packet, to continue this item. So this is from the owner and the architect representing them. They have a conflict. They've asked to continue this to a future date. Staff has reached out to them and has identified October 3rd as a date that will work for them. As such, staff concurs with the request for continuance and would suggest continuing the item to October 3rd.
Thank you, Rob. So at this point, I will open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on the item. And is there anybody online? And with that, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and a motion. If you're willing to continue the item.
I'll make a motion that the item be continued. Sorry, that the item be continued to the October 3rd agenda.
And I can second.
So there's a motion by Vice Mayor Landry, a second by Councilmember Lopez to continue the item. to continue the public hearing to the October 3rd, 2023 City Council meeting. Roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Spizola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. So moves us to new business. First item is item 16, approval of the fiscal year 2023-24 City of Campbell Investment Policy Update. And our presenter is Will Fuentes, Finance Director.
Good evening, Council. I'm here I'm here to present the fiscal year 2023 24 update to our adjustment of policy. It's a thing that we typically do. It's a thing that we typically do each year. There are also typically a small changes that occur per year to either comply with the CGC or also any other changes in a state law. But we also do an update at least once per year to comply to our own codes as well. It's each time we do an update, we also go to our subcommittee, which we also did again on August the 21st. There are again a few small changes, so that we're consistent with the CGC, but there is also one a change that we would hope that the council to consider, and it's to allow for the optional use of external firms that would help us to give additional expertise, but also so that we're able to use their tools, their data that they see each day. It would also help to improve our reports that go to a council each a month, each a quarter, and each year. And then also because we have a big amount of bond proceeds that come with their their own their own difficulties to invest. An external firm could also help us to invest the bond proceeds in the best way. And also, although it's not the main objective, we who feel that an outside firm could also generate returns that were either equal to or above what they charge per year. So if the council were to approve the change, we would love to do either an RFP process or close to choose the best firms, and then also any of the proposals would also be discussed with the subcommittee, and it's taken that although we don't do it in today, there are also a fair number of public agencies out there who do. So it's not either. And although we could use an external company, we also would work together to ensure that our goals and objectives are met, but also that we were to apply to each component of our own our own policies as well. So with that, I'll also have an opportunity for the subcommittee to report out, and also open it up to questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Sergio, do you want to?
I don't have much to add because I think, Will, you did a great job covering it. And I really appreciate how much you took our feedback and heard it. And I see it clearly reflected here. So that's always great. But I'll just add for context, we had some good discussion on including at length on the benefits of getting an external advisor and some of the pros and cons. I appreciate that feedback was taken here, and this is adapted from what was originally proposed. Some other minor things that tighten up the policy that we caught, but I think is a very robust discussion.
And I would concur with Councilmember Lopez. We did have a good discussion, and I appreciate that our comments were incorporated into the report and very accurately. And I see the investment external investment advisor is adding another tool to the box to help us manage our portfolio. And I'm pleased to see that you did add some language in there about reporting timely to the city manager, the finance director, on actions that advisor takes. So thank you for the great report. And with that, are there any questions of council?
Question, and I realize we'll address this as well as both of you, but I still have a question regarding hiring an additional advisor in terms of investing funds in other instruments. My concern was the fee that was charged, and I know you addressed this to a degree. It would seem to me that they would have to generate enough extra revenue to cover their own fee at the minimum, and we would expect them to do more. But my other concern about that is it seems that when we're talking about investing public funds, we don't have the options that private investors have for different types of stocks and bonds and diversification and all this and that, which actually usually result in generation of greater percentage of interest and so on. It seems the instruments that we have in public policy here and public agencies is limited to the kinds of certain kinds of investments that are relatively safe and therefore necessarily pay a lower rate of interest. And so I know, again, it's very preliminary, but I'm just questioning about whether that person can really suggest other instruments that we would have never thought of before or something of that nature. I don't quite get that.
What would you respond?
The hope is that you know, through the data, through the different options that they see each day, but also to their a whole team who really pays attention to the market each a day. They're able to see and to purchase a different options that could generate up to 2 to 3 times what they cost. It's certainly not a it's certainly not a guarantee that they would be able to generate enough to cover their fees, but they do heavily earn over and above what our own internal teams are able to do on our own. Although we do pay attention to the market, it's also a thing that we may not be able to do each day, but also there an external company with a whole team that's only dedicated to this, had also help our team through their expertise. And again, just all of the data and tools that they're able to say and use each day as well.
My only other concern would be is if we did hire such a firm, would we be able to see results within a year? I'd hate to have some sort of commitment where we'd have to say we plan to do it for 3 to 5 years, because to give them an opportunity to see if they improve things for us, that would be a longer period of time and much more fees, which are likely to go up on a yearly basis. So I'm sorry, I just have these reservations about the success of that, and whether we would try it out for a year and see, or what. I'm just not sure. I don't know if the other members of the council have these concerns.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on this because I said this in our subcommittee meeting, and I'll say it now. I'm just skeptical of the ability of financial advisors to return above the market. There's a lot of studies that show that a negligible amount really do, and you can generally attribute that to luck, because on a long enough time scale, that number basically goes down to zero. And so I see the real value of this, frankly, as not that we're going to get someone who can magically beat the market, but more in the toolkit, the information, the real-time data that they'll provide, that I think as just the environment becomes more dynamic, I think it's going to allow us the flexibility to meet that demand. And I'm more, I see that, I think that's really the services that we're paying for. And if they can also generate returns, which, look likely, and I want to really be measuring whether that's the case, or it's just that, the market happened to do well that year. I see that as a plus, but I think, slightly different concerns, but along the same lines. I was similarly very skeptical, but I think ultimately what convinced me in the presentation is the benefit of just being able to use the data and the analysis and extra staff and resources that they can provide.
Vice Mayor Landry.
If I read the memo correctly, at this point, staff is just asking to go out to a vendor to then obtain future council consideration. So right now, we're not committing to this person. We're allowing you to go out and get pricing, so the pricing will come back to then help address better. Are we really going to benefit financially from bringing on someone at X dollar amount? So I would be supportive of it right now, because we're not really committing to the contract, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Well, if we were to do that, then I would expect that we would ask that vendor to give us an indication as a part of their bid as to how many years they feel they would need such a contract in order to be successful. I'm unwilling to go out for something that says, 5 years or more, when we're talking about between $30,000 and $50,000 a year of cost.
Councilmember, any other questions? Okay, at this point, I'll open it up.
And I don't have any disagreement with that. I just want to be really clear, because that's not exactly what I see in the presentation that we're being presented. And so just whatever services, just be really clear about the services that are being asked for, because the framing would impact it. If it's just, do we want someone to help us beat the market? That's very different and a lot more speculative than do we want analysis and data and real-time updates and all that different, different framing, even if it's going to be provided by, the same, by the same firm. So just be clear about that when it comes back, and I see that at least in the presentation.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, then I'll open it up for public discussion. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on it? And I don't see anybody online, so I'll bring it back to council for further discussion and or a motion.
I'm happy to move. Sorry, just trying to find the right page now.
Screen.
Oh, that helps. I move that the city council adopt resolution approving the annual update to the city's investment policy.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez and a second by Vice Mayor Landry to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 17 is consider nominating new priority development areas, PDAs, and priority sites to be included in Plan Bay Area 2050 plus for future planning, infrastructure, and housing funding opportunities. And our presenter is Stephen Rose, our senior planner. Hello, Stephen.
The light's not on.
How about that?
That's good.
Okay, perfect. So the purpose of this item is to present options to modify or nominate new and existing priority development areas and priority sites for the city. This opportunity to modify or nominate PDAs and priority sites presents itself typically every 4 years to align with the updates to the Plan Bay Area or the city or the area's regional transportation plan. The current nomination window ending later this month. Priority development areas and sites designated through this process are to be included in future planning, infrastructure, and housing funding opportunities. So in a nutshell, priority sites are districts mapped by ABAG or MTC near public transit areas planned for homes, jobs, and community amenities, which are used in regional transportation plans, such as Plan Bay Area, to target grant funding under various programs and initiatives, such as those aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The city's existing PDA was established in 2007 and is now outdated as it no longer aligns with areas planned for growth. To modify the existing PDA or designate new PDAs, the city must fall within an eligible area, be locally nominated, and include a plan for growth by 2025. So in consideration of these criteria, the staff report presented 3 options to amend the city's existing PDA, which included the first option, which is establishing the Hamilton Avenue area plan as a new PDA and align the existing PDA with existing area plans, such as the Winchester Boulevard Master Plan, the Downtown Development Plan, and the Pruneyard Creekside Commercial District. The second option was to establish the Hamilton Avenue PDA and also expand those areas to include within the existing PDA to include eligible commercial properties in eligible areas. And the third option was simply nominating all eligible PDA areas as the city's PDA. And in consideration of those 3 options, staff was recommending the first. Priority sites, by comparison, are areas are intended to create a pipeline of locally prioritized significant sites, which are close to services, public transit, and also plan for housing that support a wide array of income levels. So as a new program, there are no sites in Campbell that are presently designated priority sites. And to qualify as a priority site, the property must fall within an eligible area and satisfy one of 3 development capacity categories. This is being regionally significant, a community anchor, or falling within a public sites portfolio, which is essentially for Campbell city-owned site. In consideration of these nomination criteria and to maximize future grant funding opportunities, staff is recommending nominating all eligible sites included in Table 2 of the staff report, with 1 minor correction, that being 700 West Hamilton. While it meets the development capacity criteria of a community anchor, it actually falls outside the eligible area, which is shown here on the right. And as such, staff has proposed an amendment to the motion to reflect its removal. So in consideration of the options and sites presented, staff is recommending the City Council adopt a resolution amending the boundaries and renaming the existing PDA, the Central Campbell Priority Development Area, and establishing the Hamilton Avenue Precise Plan as a new priority development area, and nominating all the sites included in Table 2 of the staff report as priority sites, with the exception of 700 West Hamilton Avenue, as noted by the amended motion here on the screen. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any questions from the council of Stephen? Councilmember Lopez.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate you bringing this forward. I'll probably have more to say on that with comments in a second. But my question is just to delve a little bit more into the potential drawbacks in the table summary, which great presentation of information, very helpful. For option 2 specifically, the main drawback is that we would have to establish plans for the newly designated areas. And I'm wondering, how does that intersect with the timeline, the September 30th deadline? Is it the same deadline? Is there more time? And just what would that process look like? And assuming that it is possible for that to move forward, just realistically, what would that look like in terms of staff and city resources?
So to nominate those areas in option 2, we just need to have a plan by 2025, so not by the end of this month, which is the nomination window. So what we're largely long range committing to is the city developing or expanding our existing area plans to cover those areas mapped. And because the costs for those aren't really estimated, I mean, as an example, the Hamilton Avenue Precise Plan, as an estimated, we pursued a grant funding opportunity of $400,000, just provided the ballpark. So if you were to be kind of expanding that similar concept, expanding either our Winchester or other area plans, you'd be looking at kind of a similar, price tag, if not more, because we need to be planning for whatever additional housing capacity and environmental impact analysis that might be warranted. So yeah, in short, no immediate fiscal impact with the action tonight, but long term we would be committing to adopting new area plans, expanding our existing.
And I'm sorry if I missed this in here, but how long was that process? Or how long ago and how long was the process for the Hamilton Area Precise Plan?
So the Hamilton Avenue Precise Plan has not been adopted yet. So it's called for by our new in the new land use element of the general plan, so planned area or 2040 general plan. Envision Campbell. So it's something that it's up and coming. We're going to be coming back to council, I believe, at our next council meeting to present an opportunity of a PDA grant, which has also been offered by ABAG MTC for its development.
For that, and that's the 400,000.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Oops, sorry. Microphone problem over here. I didn't notice anywhere in here on your discussion of option 2, the Campbell Village Neighborhood Association, which is where I live, although I don't own a property, but I live in the neighborhood, pays a special tax. When we annexed into Campbell from San Jose, we now pay, I think it's $600 a parcel. And the theory behind that was San Jose was losing the financial benefit of the businesses along Camden Avenue, and that we're paying this money because they were offset. Well, the parcels are sitting empty or totally underutilized. And I don't see anything in here regarding that this could potentially then benefit the city by generating more tax revenue and sales tax, which is kind of part of the whole reason this was annexed into Campbell.
It's a fair point. So going back to the 3 options which we have.
So option 2 is what I'm looking at. And Camden Avenue, when Campbell Village was annexed, Camden Avenue was part of the annexation. And again, this tax that this community is paying is supposedly to offset the fact that San Jose lost sales tax, but we're not generating a lot of sales tax. So to me, it was like, why wouldn't we do option 2? I understand Councilmember Lopez's question, but the area is a lot smaller than the Hamilton area. Would it really be another 400,000 to do an area plan for that?
So, I mean, as you rightfully noted, Campbell Village does have an existing area plan. It doesn't capture all of the areas indicated by option 2.
Right.
So those areas, including Dell, Campbell Tech Park, and the like, are not included. So that would require an additional planning effort to cover those areas. Again, we were also targeting contiguous areas, and specifically the PDA is meant for areas which are targeting increased housing and job growth and development. As Campbell Village is predominantly single-family homes, the option which is presented here is targeting, pretty much excluding the single-family homes from that mapping effort. But it's presented as an option of how you could go about including additional areas, such as those rental properties along Campbell.
Right, and I guess I can't hear you without this on, but when it's on, you can't hear me. I guess I'm just concerned because those properties are sitting underutilized and the community is paying a tax to basically being allowed to be in Campbell. So that's why I was looking at supporting too. And by adding Camden Avenue and Dell Avenue area, Christchurch, to me, doesn't seem like the area plan would cost $400,000. Seems like equity square footage wise, the other ones are going to be more expensive.
And what we're presenting an option to here is a larger expansion of PDA boundary, which would be trying to create a contiguous area, which expands down south like along White Oaks, along Camden, but also picking up additional properties in Winchester, which are not presently captured by the Winchester Boulevard Master Plan. So I couldn't give you a perfect price estimate of how much the area plan effort would cost. I was just using the Hamilton Avenue as a relevant recent upcoming case study, which the council may consider.
Oh, and I didn't realize that you also were picking up all the way over to Winchester. So then the square footage is a little more equitable. Thank you.
I would also mention it does also extend further down on Bascom Avenue than our current Creekside Greenyard commercial district capture.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Furtado.
I have several questions. Just on the item that you were just talking about, would you clarify again the what is it? The inclusion, if that's the right word, of like Dell and over off, I guess I should say McClincy and so on. Are you intending to include those?
No, so if I can clarify, I'll show here on the screen. So this is a comparison between the city's existing priority development area and that which is being recommended by staff tonight. So the option one, which is the staff recommendation, would be picking up the Hamilton Avenue precise plan area, that area which you see here in red.
Okay.
And just pretty much map realign the city's existing priority development area to mesh with the city's planned its existing area plans, including the Winchester Boulevard Master Plan, the Downtown Development Plan, the Creekside Commercial District. So this staff recommendation does not pick up those additional properties on Dell or further south on Camden or further south on Winchester, as option two does present as a choice.
Okay, so in that regard, under option, well, the existing PDA, why is the community center included in that?
It's a good question. The city's existing PDA was based on the redevelopment agency plan, plan for boundary, which included actually two segments. It was mapped based on the northerly portion of it. That was again is mapped based on current RDA plans for redevelopment funding and use of those dollars. And as such, it's no longer a current planning document because our current area plans don't align and don't plan for additional significant housing or job growth in the community center as an example.
So we would not want to include the community center.
And largely, you would. I mean, we are picking up properties. We are picking up a portion of the community center, which again can be used for grant funding opportunities along the Winchester Boulevard commercial corridor. But we're removing a portion of the community center in the staff recommendation.
Yeah, but grant opportunities are for housing, right?
For transportation related improvements, housing, and anything, and again, development of plans, and it could be used for a variety of purposes. There's a variety of different policies and initiatives which may be initiated by ABAG or MTC, which could target housing or development of plans for housing, but also could be targeted reductions in greenhouse gases, as previously mentioned.
Anything like that would require further council approval down the road, I assume. The other question I had, you mentioned that priority sites now are a new designation. So those areas that might be designated priority sites, are they in line, if you will, for a higher ranking in terms of funding through ABAG than priority development areas?
Well, I wouldn't say higher than prior, they're in a different category. So to clarify, you have two almost competing buckets of funds. There might be programs or initiatives targeted at development of sites within priority development areas or infrastructure, public roadway improvements and the like. And then separately, priority sites is a new designation, which is intended to target the development, kind of create a pipeline of the more regionally significant, locally nominated sites, which we believe require additional support in either the upfront planning efforts for developing the site, like even creating a plan for how to go about developing the site, or later on funding it. So,
well, that being the case, why don't we include the VTA site on Winchester Boulevard, which has already been designated as a shared kind of like project between us and VTA and ABAG, or whatever, the third one, government agency, and include that there, because that is definitely a site that we are looking at, because the housing that's proposed there is 100% affordable.
It's a great point. So for Campbell, our local nominations as part of our priority site designation would only include locally owned sites, those owned by the city of Campbell. Separately, I'll offer that that site is proposed to be designated a priority site by BTA as part of their site's portfolio option. So it's being separately considered. They'd asked our department to write a letter of support for that designation. We had indicated that we would, given its local significance and proximity to one of our own planned for priority sites, that we did support it.
Okay. Of course, we don't own the other properties either, but they're within the city border, of course.
They're meeting other criteria.
The other question is, for example, in priority sites, does that put any additional pressure on the current property owners to sell for that type of development or anything along those lines? Now, the reason why I asked was because Summer Winds is included in that. It's been a successful business for some time. A lot of people like to go there. It's a draw to our city. You're including it as a priority site, which would presumably, if I understand that correctly, then be a potential development site sometime in the future should the owner decide they want to sell or do something different with that property. Am I interpreting that correctly?
You are. I'll also candidly say the priority site designation is all carrots, no sticks. Mm-hmm. So it could avail that property owner of additional funding opportunities in the future should they pursue to develop that site. There'd be no obligations by the city's designation as a priority site.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Sorry, to ask a question. So we have Anoka, Soka, we have all these area plans, Winchester and all that. Those are all going away, or have they already gone away with the general plan?
So the 2040 general plan, the city retired its north of Campbell Avenue area plan and south of Campbell Avenue area plan. The other existing area plans would remain. So Winchester, the downtown.
As those went away, we had this C3 list of uses for downtown, and then we had the C3A or whatever the other little chart. Do those now get all combined together, or are we now having just the C3 downtown and the second chart for the other areas?
There still is within the new central business district zoning designation, 2 tables which relate to uses allowed in master plan areas and those areas located in downtown.
So those still stay, those 2 different charts?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, one more question, and that is, when we make these designations for priority development areas or priority sites, if we accept no funds in the future for a given area, do we have the option of de-designating something within a priority development area? I just wonder, I don't want to obligate a future council to a decision that might be something other than we might be undertaking.
Yeah, I would offer every 4 years, this opportunity tends to present itself. It's not a fixed schedule, but at that point in time, the city could propose an amendment or change the boundaries of the PDA to ABAG MPC. I mean, as far as binding the hands of future council, largely these are designations which I believe are held by ABAG MPC. They're locally nominated, but it's a designation I think that they hold on these properties. I don't think that it would have it. The city could consider removal of those sites just like they are tonight, considering amending those boundaries.
And does ABAC still have the designation for priority conservation sites? I know it's not a part of our discussion tonight, but is priority conservation sites still a designation of ABAC?
Not to my knowledge.
It used to be. I don't know. Was it? It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Community Director Eastwood is indicating yes, that's correct.
Councilmember Lopez.
I'm sorry, I have an additional question too. And this might be a tricky one, so I apologize in advance, but can you give a sense of the kind of scope that we're talking about for funding that this would make us eligible for? Yeah, I'm trying to get a sense of the trade-offs of staff time versus the benefit. And I know that's tricky just by its nature, but just a general sense of what we typically expect from these kind of funding
So
opportunities.
grant funding opportunities vary. The only relevant examples I could point to would be One Bay Area grants funding opportunities, which were presented by OBAG 1 through 3. The city had applied for grant funding under those opportunities. I believe under the third opportunity. I don't recall the exact dollar figure that we had pursued, but I think it's like $650,000. It depends on the project and the scope of the project, how much grant funding is available. Under the priority site designation, it's noted in the report, there's $23 million of potential funding opportunity presenting itself in the near term. But as far as future, it'd be speculative for me to guess what the exact future grant funding opportunities may be.
Again, this is going to be a tricky question, but I guess would we be applying for more funding if the area were bigger, or would the amount kind of look the same, just distributed differently? I know it's difficult to speculate, but I'm just trying to get a sense of the strategy of our department.
So because the PDAs can often serve as a eligibility criteria for grant funding, whether or not a site is within or in proximity to, by arguably having a larger PDA, you could avail the city of a greater coverage area for grant funding opportunities. Not necessarily does your PDA have to perfectly align with the grant funding opportunity, it just has to be in furtherance of it. But again, future grants might have different obligations, and it would be speculative again for me to exactly say which sites would be the best to nominate for future grant funding.
But it's more, if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like the amount of the funding might be the same, but there might be a higher probability that the funding could fall somewhere in the area if the area were larger. Does that kind of make sense as a breakdown?
And I think you're asking about Robbie's community director trade-offs. Yeah. So on one side, the more area we have, the more lands we could ask for funding for any sort of investment. It could be for infrastructure development, housing development, or even capital improvements, capital improvement. On the other side, any areas, as Steve disclosed, we designate to go into a PDA, we're obligated to update our specific plan. So that is a work plan item, as Stephen's mentioned, anywhere between $300,000 to $600,000 in cost. So it's weighing those two. What you see on the staff recommendation is picking the what's in our general plan, the precise plan that we're going to focus on for the next 2 years, and aligning the boundaries to our existing plans. So it's tailored to what we're focused on. If we were to go beyond that, we could find funding, but again, we have no plans for developing those areas. We have to develop those plans.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And perhaps just to add to that.
Do you have questions? Okay, I have a couple questions. First on the,
I was just
I'm sorry, Stephen, I didn't mean to.
So the staff recommendation is really the cost neutral option because we're relying on existing area plans.
So I had a couple questions regarding the PDA options, and if the council was to go beyond the option 1, which is the staff recommendation, and choose option 2 as well, that requires the creation of a new area plan. Is that correct? Similar to what we're doing for the Hamilton, and is that correct?
That's correct.
And has there been any discussion or about whether or not there's staff capacity to handle that? It would be a creation of a new work plan.
Madam Mayor.
I mean, go ahead, City Manager.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought maybe I'd just interject a little bit to get to the point of your question. That and as Mr. Rose spoke correctly, that the Hamilton Avenue precise plan is already sort of in our wheelhouse. It's something that council's prioritized, something that is definitely in our work plans to develop. The others aren't. And so my real concern, and this is why we were only recommending one as a cost neutral, is that there is staffing capacity issues, trying to not only complete this work here, this important housing work, but climate action planning, economic development, all these other ventures that are really high priority now. And what I don't want to do is distract us from those priorities by broadening the scope of that. And there is resources issues. We certainly don't have the resources, so we'd be looking at grant funds. But once we expand that, we are on the hook to develop those plans. And I'm leery of making those commitments without those being the council's priorities right now. Not that those aren't important things. Perhaps those aren't the most important things right now, at least as I understand them from the council. And that's why recommendation was made for us.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a concern of the impact to staff since it hasn't really been contemplated in the work plans. And then I want to go on to the potential priority sites on the table 2. And the staff recommendation says that there's no direct impact in identifying those sites, but I don't understand why we would be including a couple of the sites, namely the 290 Dillon and the Campbell Technology Park in those sites, given that, well, particularly with the 290 Dillon site, because it's on the list, but it's questionable whether or not that's even viable for the corporation yard to be relocated. So I would like to have a better understanding of that.
Sure, I'll respond. Robbie, Community Development Director. So we have this is a new program for ABAG, the priority sites. Done a lot of research. I think there's still things ABAG, my comment, is figuring out on the priority sites program. In general, the intent is for cities to look to identify areas where they want to do housing growth, and ideally near transit. And they're going to provide funding opportunities generally for infrastructure or studies to help that housing growth, to meet the transit-oriented development principles under ABAG. So for these, we've asked ABAG staff, what are the drawbacks of the priority site? They've stated to this point, there are none. It's only a funding opportunity. The quote is, this is a carrot-only proposition. As these sites were all identified as housing opportunity sites in our housing elements, and you're correct, Madam Mayor, we still are doing feasibility studies on the courtyard. Again, we saw this as an opportunity. If there's an opportunity to apply for funding, to perhaps go into those feasibility studies to do infrastructure development when development comes along, again, it presents an opportunity for the city to apply for that grant funding.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Landry.
So if we go with option 1, at what point can you add in the sites that are on option 2 map? Is this a 4-year deal done, or is this like 8 years? When could you add those back in?
It would be the next cycle. And as Mr. Rose has said, it's typically every 4 years.
I'm having a hard time. I got to turn this
Typically,
up.
we would have to wait 4 years, Councilwoman Landry.
Okay. And the reason that the technology park and the Dillon sites were included in the option 2 was just because that's all within the transit area. I mean, because to me, the tech park has like already been designated for housing. So why would that be in this one?
Yeah, two reasons. One is they're eligible. Only certain sites are eligible. And 2, we've designated them as housing opportunity sites. So as we're designating them for housing, they're eligible for the program. Staff has recommended we include them. Again, the result is we could apply for grant funding for feasibility studies, infrastructure support, or other things related to development on the sites.
Thank you. Can I just add to that, though? Make sure it's clear, and I think it is clear to the council, the priority development area is one recommendation, the priority sites is a second. With regard to the sites and the questions we have, if there's any questions or concerns about specific sites, we can take those off as well with the direction of the council for that discussion as well. So it's not a take all the sites, and look at those at future date if appropriate as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
proposing that perhaps under the priority sites, we remove one or two, like the Technology Parkway or so?
I think that was the question of the mayor. I'm not sure if that's the pleasure of the council, but that was the question. And my response, you have the ability to do that if you choose to. Staff's recommendation is simply a recommendation. It's not take the whole list or no list. You can modify that list. At least remove sites. Those are all the sites that are eligible.
Sure.
And I believe that the staff presented in the staff presentation that they're recommending that we remove the 700 West Hamilton Avenue as a site as part of the recommendation. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If anyone in the audience wish to speak, and I don't see anybody online. Check again. So I'll bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. Councilmember Lopez.
So thank you, staff, for all the questions. It's a complex topic, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that I think what's driving this is that there's a lot of energy right now behind doing everything we can to make our housing program successful and all the other work we're doing. And so I'm really glad that we're looking at every option to do that. I'm hopeful that this the funding that this would make us eligible for that will take advantage of that any opportunity we can. So I appreciate the work that's gone into bringing this forward, including a new program where it sounds like even they're still figuring out some of the details. So I think that's going to be helpful. I was initially torn between options 1 and 2, just because I think 2 would provide better alignment with a lot of the just a broader scope of where we're thinking some of what was in our housing element and general plan. But after hearing the discussion, I'd be supportive of the staff recommendation. Just thinking of the trade-offs, along with just giving the feedback, not necessarily part of a motion, but that as in future years, future work plans, as the cycle comes back up, let's continue to look at those different options if we're in a different place and we can plan proactively. Because I think it would certainly make sense to continue, especially since we'd be still right in the midst of the 8-year cycle. So I think that for the housing elements, I think that would make a lot of sense. So I'm willing to hear other opinions, but just right now I'm with the staff recommendation.
Vice Mayor Landry.
I actually was leaning towards option 2 also, some of because of what I stated about the fact that we're paying taxes and we're not benefiting with new businesses. But I'd also add that if the corporation yard were to be moved over there, the whole Christchurch, did I say it right that time? Christchurch Avenue being a private road is one of the obstacles to what I see as having the corp yard over there. And by adding that into a PDA, that potentially could give us more grant opportunities to address the road that's in there. So I'm still kind of in the number 2 option. Also, it picks up some of the properties along Bascom where like Goodies was closed. There's Mountaineering. I don't think it's the Mountaineering store anymore, but there seems to be underutilized parcels in that area along Bascom. So I was leaning towards option 2, but I'm open to the rest of the conversation.
Councilmember Furtado.
And of course, it seems to me that later, if I understand things correctly, we could add individual parcels later on if we want to, right? I mean,
4 years from now.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right, you're saying we can't add for 4 years. Right.
Is that an absolute legal requirement?
There's a cycle to it. I'm sorry, there's a cycle to this process, and every 3 to 4 years they open up that cycle again. So as they plan for their next cycle, so it is cyclical, and it will be a period of time, but there will be another opportunity.
Because I would tend to go with the more conservative at this point in time, the option 1, the smaller pattern. So I have, I guess, a question. Maybe staff could answer this too. With that annexation, I thought part of the requirement was that some of the sales tax in the area there that we annexed that generated sales tax went back to San Jose. So I thought that was where the payback to San Jose was from the sales tax rather than on private parcels.
Yeah.
Someone would have to explain that to me if I
clarify,
recall.
and get a little bit off topic here, so I'll just mention it. And I see the city attorney getting a little bit nervous about us talking about getting too far
Well,
down.
it is
this, but
germane because it's part of the decision
yeah,
whether we want to include it or not.
Community facility district that area pays for is really for maintenance and improvements. It wasn't to the CFD isn't a payment for loss of sales tax. Now, it is true the city pays San Jose for some sales tax losses, but the CFD, the tax the residents pay, is for maintenance and operations. It was supposed to fund an additional police officer, I think, which we have done over the years. But it's really maintenance and some improvements.
It's a separate sort of pot of money, if you will. It's not tied into the sales tax issue. The sales tax is being paid by us, or that some portion of it, to San Jose to so-called make them whole and allow us to annex property that generated sales tax for them. So that was my understanding from before.
I guess my understanding was we do pay money to San Jose to offset the sales tax, but we're not generating the sales tax because the businesses are sitting empty.
Yes, so therefore we're not paying.
No, we still have to pay.
We pay based on what the sales tax is, I thought, not just because it's there. We pay
Can
on
you
a,
clarify? Because I thought it was a flat amount that we're paying regardless of whether we're generating it.
I mean, we could probably follow up with the council with more detail, but I just to try to provide a basic understanding. It's a very complex formula of how that property tax dollars, sales tax dollars gets paid to San Jose. It's not just so simple as X and Y formula. So I'd be leery to get into great details about how that gets calculated, but it is based on sales tax and cost of living increases and very complex formula.
so it's the community facilities district then that the residents have to pay a little more for us to put in and bring that area kind of up to the standards that Campbell had been putting into other areas before, to sort of make up for some of that, as I understand it from the years ago when that happened.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, the payment San Jose is not just sales tax, it's loss of property tax, it's loss of sales tax, and it's loss of TOT in that area. It's a combination of all of those.
Councilmember Spatola?
I support staff's recommendations. Enough said.
Thank you. And I'm leaning towards supporting the staff recommendation as well. And I think it's good discussion to have, looking at the other options and expanding, but I really respect the work plans and the resources that will go into having to create a new area, a new plan for any of the additional options. So I'm leaning towards option one. And as far as the potential priority sites, I do still have a concern about including 290 Dillon, but I wouldn't want to preclude us from having the availability of potential grant funding for the relocation study that is going to happen. So for that reason, I would be inclined to leave it on the list, but having it on the list to me could imply, or someone could take that, oh gee, we're going to move the corporation yard, and I just don't think, I think that's a premature decision and statement to have. So that's my caution on that. Councilmember Vice Mayor Landry.
From what I can tell from the map, the courtyard's not on the option one, is it?
No, I'm talking about, there's two different actions that staff is asking us to take tonight. One is on the PDA options in table one, and then on table two, the summary of the potential priority sites.
That's what I missed. Okay.
So with that, is there any further discussion and or a motion? Not everybody speak at once.
I'll make a, excuse me, make a motion that the city council adopt a resolution amending the boundaries of the Central Campbell Redevelopment Area Priority Development Area, PDA, renaming the Central Campbell Redevelopment Area Priority Development Area, PDA, the Central Campbell Priority Redevelopment Area, PDA, and establishing the Hamilton Avenue Precise Plan as a new priority development area, PDA, as set forth in option 1, and nominating all sites included in table 2 as priority sites.
And we need the amendment, right?
Oh, what was the
Excluding 700 West Hamilton? 700.
excluding 700 West Hamilton?
I'll second. For that, thanks.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Scazola and a second by Councilmember Lopez to approve the staff recommendation, amending the this priority sites in table 2, removing the property at 700 West Hamilton from the list. And is there any discussion on the motion? As I said, I would leave it in there for the potential that we might be able to have some type of future funding, grant funding for a feasibility study. So I wouldn't want to preclude us from that opportunity. So for that reason, I would leave it on. So we have a roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola. Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Great. Oh. Next item is 18, resolution amending the agreement for city manager services. Thank you, Stephen and Rob. Thank you. And our presenter is Angelique Gaeta, our assistant city manager.
Thank you, Honorable
Welcome.
Mayor and City Council members. So this item before you is an approval of a third amended agreement for services with the city manager, and it reflects the amendments that you asked us to make. It includes 2 main changes or amendments. One is a 4% cost of living increase consistent with that was given and negotiated with represented and unrepresented groups back in 2022. And also includes language for an annual cost of living and an amount equal to unclassified management or the California Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, whichever is less. And not much more than that. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the council? If not, I will ask if there's any member of the public that wishes to speak on this item. I don't see anybody online, so I will bring it back to council for discussion and then motion.
There's no discussion. I'll make a motion that the city council adopt a resolution amending the agreement for city manager services to provide for a merit increase and a cost of living adjustment if certain conditions exist, and updating the salary schedule to reflect the increase in the city manager's compensation.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez and a second by Councilmember Scazola to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Great. Item 19 is a resolution amending the city clerk services agreement, and our presenter is Angelique Gaeta, our assistant city manager.
Thank you again, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So this is the first amended agreement with the city clerk for services. And this also reflects the direction coming from the council. It covers 4 items, including a merit increase to move the city clerk to step 2. Coverage for healthcare premiums for the city clerk and her dependents, which is consistent with the contracts of the other city council appointees. Extension of her severance period from 3 to 6 months, also consistent with the market and comparable city clerk positions. And an annual performance evaluation to occur in June as opposed to August to again align with other city appointed contracts as well as our budget process. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, I will go to the public and ask if there's anyone wishing to speak on this item. And I don't see anybody online. So with that, I'll bring it back to council for a discussion and or a motion.
There's no discussion. Sorry, if there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion. see any. I make a motion that the city council adopt a resolution amending the agreement for city clerk services, to provide for a merit increase, provide for full coverage of health insurance premiums for the city clerk and her dependents, provide for a longer severance period, and provide for annual performance evaluation in the month of June.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Landry and a second by Councilmember Scazola to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Item 20 is designation of a voting delegate and alternate for the 2023 League of California Cities Annual Conference, and our presenter is our city manager, Brian Leventhal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Every year, the League of California Cities has an annual conference, and it alternates between Southern California and Northern California. This year, the conference is in Sacramento, September 20th through 22nd. And as part of that process, the league asks for the city to nominate a voting delegate by council action, and up to 2 alternates. We usually just recommend 1, but if there's more than 2 alternates, you're welcome to recommend them as well. For purposes of conducting the city's vote on their business meeting, typically at these conferences, League of California Cities will put forth resolutions or motions administratively on legislation to support or other city actions to support. And so this voting member will be representing the city in Sacramento on Friday, September 22nd to cast a vote on those motions. So that is our recommendation. Typically, we ask council members to volunteer for that. After this item came out, I did have at least 1 council member indicate their interest. They're already going to be at the conference, and another council member who would be more than willing to serve as an alternate. And I don't want to speak for those council members, but it does appear like you have a council member or 2 that are willing to serve in that capacity.
Okay, I'll start with any questions.
Just to clarify, the meeting agenda packet says Friday is in Long Beach. For clarification, everything is in Sacramento.
That is correct.
And can I just make sure I heard you correctly? The voting is the Friday, so the last day of the conference?
That is also correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to mention that I have registered to attend the meeting and I'm planning to go.
Okay.
And I am planning to go. I have not registered. I have a conflict for the first day of the conference. I would plan on being in full attendance on Friday when the voting takes place, and most, if not all, of the prior day. But I would be more comfortable serving as alternate, given that I have a partial conflict. But otherwise, happy to be there.
Okay. Let me open it up to the public. And is there anyone in the chamber that wishes to speak? And I don't see anybody online. So I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. So it sounds like Councilmember Furtado will be attending and Councilmember Lopez. Would you be willing to be the voting delegate, given that Councilmember Lopez may have may not be able to fulfill that duty? If that's amenable to the council, could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the city council designate Dan Furtado as our voting delegate and Sergio Lopez as the alternate for the League of California Cities Conference General Business Meeting to be held September 20th through the 22nd, with the voting day of the 22nd.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Landry and a second by Councilmember Scazola to appoint Councilmember Furtado as the voting delegate and Councilmember Lopez as the alternate. Could we have roll call?
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. Thank you. So we'll move on to unfinished business. Thank you for waiting there, Leslie. Item number 21 is our economic development strategy plan update, and the item is going to be introduced by our city manager, Brian Leventhal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Again, I want to just briefly provide an introduction and context, and then I would turn it over to Leslie Parks, our economic development staff. And also I want to introduce our economic development consultants that are also on the Zoom call. I see them here. I see Christine Fistenberg and Audrey Taylor. And is there someone else from your team that I'm missing? If not, just Audrey and Christine. So those your consultants are on the call as well. Just provide a little bit of context to this. We're providing a lot of information tonight, and we're taking this economic development strategy plan in phases. And the first part of that is really to analyze the pure data, and that's what's been shared in the packet. I have to say we can't reasonably anticipate giving you a packet of 200 plus pages of detailed data and expect you to assimilate it and give really meaningful responses and have engagement on that. So tonight is part of a process where we will in the future have those more in-depth dialogues. But tonight we want to just really share with you the base facts. These aren't arguable. They're just the facts. It's the pure data. And it's really easy when you see a lot of this pure data to start asking questions about what does it mean and how is it going to fold into a strategy, and wanting to provide input on what perhaps some data is more important to you and other data is maybe not as important to you. And I wanted to assure the council this is the first step of a long process of discussions. We also anticipate coming back to you in October to talk about branding and give you some concepts. Not recommendations of brand X or brand Y, but to start that conversation. And that will be a study session, and we'll be focused more on really feedback on branding. And then as a follow-up to all of that, there will be an additional study session where we will talk about a lot of the data that we're giving you this evening and connecting the dots to what does that mean and why is it important, and connecting it to strategies and having a dialogue with council about which of those priorities, that data, those strategies that are connected to them are more important to you. As we know, when we did the budget, we had to make choices. We don't have the time and the money to do everything we want. And just like an economic development plan, we can throw a ton of information on you, and you can agree that it's great information, but we can't do it all. So we plan over time on distilling this for you. We plan on providing you more opportunities to dialogue and have meaningful input on it. What we're providing you tonight is just a snapshot of that data. There's a lot of information in the packet, and I would intend in my discussions with council between now and those study sessions to continue that dialogue. If you have questions, to facilitate those discussions with staff and get responses to those. But tonight we just want to really give you a snapshot of that data, not expecting you to have a real answer to any real questions. We're more than happy, and we're here to hear your feedback and your thoughts. By all means, this is your meeting, your chance to do that, but this isn't your only chance. This is the beginning of that process. And I thought it was important to put that context here tonight, because when someone puts a bunch of information in front of me, my first thought is I have to get through this and give you responses. You don't have to get through this all tonight and give us your speak now or forever hold your peace comments on these. This will be a continued dialogue. And more to that point, we intend at least 2 specific study sessions on this topic before we really get into the adoption of those strategies. So I wanted to provide you that, just give you a little peace of mind, take the pressure off you tonight to have all the answers. But we do have our team here tonight, and they have presented this both to our economic development subcommittee and received responses. Councilmember Lopez and Vice Mayor Landry are on that economic development subcommittee. So they have provided more detail. And also to our advisory committee, which is businesses and community members that are part of that, have also provided input. So not to put you at a loss for that, because those detailed discussions have happened at those sub-level. We're trying to bring you up to speed with those. Tonight's just really the first step in that. So with that, I want to introduce Leslie Parks and our economic development team. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Appreciate that introduction and that teeing up. Let's start off. When I do these presentations, I never assume that everyone is on the same page when it comes to a definition of economic development. Basically, economic development is different for every community because each community is unique. So there's no one size that fits all. So what I have up on the first slide is a list of definitions for economic development. And I would, as you look through them, I would say, oops, okay, I would say that economic development in Campbell are programs, policies, or activities that seek to improve the economic well-being and the quality of life for a community. What we find as we do strategy, and the consultants here today have done dozens of strategies, and I myself, when I was on the other end, being a consultant, have done many strategies. But more and more, I think economic development for cities and communities now focuses on creating wealth in the community. That wealth can be for the community as a whole. It can be for the city, as I just mentioned on the previous slide, but it's about creating wealth in the community. And that can be done through a variety of ways, ensuring the economic stability of the city by monitoring your top revenue generators, and you're going to see a list of those for Campbell later in the presentation. Attracting new businesses and development. That's being partially addressed tonight with the discussion on PDAs. Sustain a strong business environment so that the regulatory process, time, and cost is reasonable. That's critical for every city. Help businesses grow and expand using resources and technical assistance, and provide a high standard of living for residents by improving their education and skills, supporting the development of affordable housing. So you can see that wealth takes shape in many different ways. So what does economic development mean for the city of Campbell? Well, when we started off with the strategy, and strategy is pretty much the process is about the same for every city that embarks on a strategy development. So the first phase is, where are we now? And tonight we are going to look at the existing conditions, as Brian said, that exist in the city's economy and its business environment. And we're just taking a snapshot of those existing conditions. No judgment, no recommendations, no real, what does this mean? It's just where we are in the business environment in Campbell and the local economy. Phase two, we start to get into more meaty discussion about assets, challenges, opportunities that come out of the phase one scan. We looked at the general plan, 2040 vision and objectives, and you'll see that, your 2020 general plan pretty much aligns with the economic development findings that we have discovered in the assets, challenges, and opportunities. And then the last part of the strategy, again, this is the meat, how will we get there? In other words, what is it going to take to address all the different opportunities, challenges, and assets that we find in the community? With that, phase three is not only how will we get there, what's it going to take, and my favorite part, who's going to do it? So that's what a strategy consists of. So when we look at an economy of a community, most cities, their economy falls into these three buckets. You see them in the circles. One is the traded sector. These are the businesses that we would find in the Dell Avenue, McGlinchey area. These are businesses that are strong generators of sales tax and jobs. And you'll find that as we move through this, that the Dell Avenue area is the #1 sales tax generating center for the city. Often neglected, probably not, doesn't pay, we don't pay much attention to it. They don't cause a lot of, commotion, and they don't demand very much, but they are the #1 sales tax generating center of the city. The second is the population-driven market, or the local survey. That's all of us who live in a community and we go out and we buy stuff. Okay, and we usually buy at a physical retail location, a brick and mortar. But increasingly, what are we doing with our spending? We're buying online. And that has really changed the sales tax revenue for cities, for the states, all across the board. The last sector is the visitor potential market. That's the people who come and stay in the community, visitors, tourists, business travelers. This particular segment has probably been the slowest to recover after the pandemic. The other two drivers have recovered pretty well since the pandemic, but not the visitor potential market. We're still lagging. Primarily that's because of business travel, because that's changed. No longer do people have to get together in the thousands for a meeting. They can do it from the comfort of their own home. So that's had an impact on the hotel, restaurant, and travel industry. So as I mentioned, the three drivers have pretty much recovered, with the exception of the visitor-driven market. What we noted in this scan are the existing conditions is that Campbell's had an increase in workforce, aging of the population, that we know, and that's shared with every community across the region, every city, and in the US. Campbell is, for lack of a better term, is a bedroom community because it supplies workers for businesses outside of the city, but it also imports a number of people into the city to work at businesses here in Campbell. The population declined, but is expected to start growing again. But I think the most important thing to note about the workforce is one, we've had an increase in the workforce here in Campbell, and two, the workforce is getting older. So I put together some demographic information for you, just so you can see where Campbell stands relative to other communities. Median age, all communities are, the median age is increasing. Campbell is 39.1, which is pretty standard when compared to San Jose and Cupertino. Los Gatos has a higher median age, 46.7. Okay. The commuters, you can see Campbell has a balance of commuters that come into the city and then people who commute out. San Jose has achieved a pretty strong balance because many years ago, they had more people leaving the city to work at jobs outside of the city. They were not an employment center. Los Gatos, more people commuting in. Cupertino, you can see twice as many people commuting in, and that's probably because of Apple. A lot of people commute to work at Apple. Median household income. Campbell does pretty well. Not as well as Cupertino, but they have very high incomes in Cupertino. The highest median income for a city, I think in the state of California, is either Hillsborough or Beverly Hills. Okay. And interesting, Hillsborough has none of the three traded sectors that I mentioned. They have no commercial areas for their citizens to shop at. They have no traded sectors, no businesses, and they don't have any hotels. So there's no place for all the people in Hillsborough to do any of that. So they go elsewhere, which is really good for Burlingame because they're right on the border. So when we look at the percent of families living in poverty, Campbell has a very low poverty rate. San Jose has the highest. Sources of income, this is a very good indicator. Campbell has 88% of its workforce working and their income derives from wages as opposed to entitlements. So this is this information here really shows how affordability in housing has gone down and rental demand for rental units has gone up because we're just losing ground on that because of the high cost of housing. Okay, so look at some of the highlights that came out of the scan, and I realized this is a very short version of what was in the different working papers that we distributed to you. But the key high points are the majority of the Campbell businesses, consistent with what we find in the United States, are small businesses. And most of them employ fewer than 5 employees. And again, this is a trend that we see across the United States. Small businesses are the backbone of the US economy. The other thing to note is that Campbell businesses are very stable. 38% of the businesses we found have been operating for 6 to 19 years. That's a long time. So a lot of them are family-owned businesses. A lot of them are in the Dell Avenue area. When I call for service providers for my home, every business I call is in the Dell Avenue area. And that's a real strong center for the city. Campbell's major sales tax groups, for the most part, have recovered since the pandemic. That's good news. Retail sales tax contributes 55% of all the sales use tax generated for the city. Business and industry, that's the Dell Avenue area, led sales tax increase by 34% from 2019 to 2022, but we've seen a decline so far in the quarters for 2023. And that was expected because we did think the economy was going to soften in 2023. There's a mix of business and industry in the top 25 sales tax producers. You'll see that list coming up. That list represents 48% of all the sales tax generated in the city. The one thing that came out of the outreach to the businesses stakeholders was that Campbell is a location, they view Campbell as a very advantageous location because of its proximity to transit and transportation arterials, and because it's on the cusp, it's on the border of San Jose, which is a very large draw for Campbell businesses. So this is the list of the city's economic centers, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to do this if I can get. Let's see, I wanted to pull up. Rob, you know how I pull up in that here. Get the cursor to get on that. Oh. Okay, it's up on, but it's not, it's up on my screen, but not on, maybe the internet's not working. But anyway, if you had a chance to look on the link, click on the link.
If it's a new window, you may have to stop sharing and then share the new
Stop sharing.
window, yeah.
That is weird, isn't it? So I can stop share here. No. Do you want to get out of it? Okay. You want me to get out of this? Stop share. Okay. It's not letting us share. It's not letting us show video. That makes sense. I have faith.
It's frozen.
Oh, okay. Can I go back to my presentation? No, it's frozen now, right? Okay, let me cancel out of this, okay? Okay, let's go back to. No, no. Can you do that? Okay, stop share. Okay. Okay. No. Brian's got it.
Okay.
That's right. Sorry about this.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Save the date, Brian. Okay. Do you want to scroll? Go ahead and scroll down through. Okay. Well, actually, I can't. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what we had one of our consultants do is map out the key economic centers of the city. You can see that they include Dell Avenue, East Hamilton, Pruneyard, McGlincy, et cetera. Most people, when I asked them the #1 sales tax generating area for the city, they responded the Pruneyard. And surprisingly, it's not the Pruneyard, it's Dell Avenue. So we had one of our consultants map out all the economic centers of the city. And then to determine how much sales tax they generate in total, we pulled all the addresses for all the businesses in those geographic areas, and we gave them to HDL, the city sales tax auditing firm, and they were able to compile the sales tax that's generated in those areas. So this data can be updated on a quarterly basis or on an annual basis so that the council can see, and I would say that these economic centers are the city's portfolio, their assets, and so they can look at those and see how they're performing over time. And that information is really critical, I think, as you plan how you are going to use sites in the city, what's important in terms of keeping those businesses healthy. And so that's the advantage of having this mapped. This is going to be a tool it's a web-based tool that will be available to the city. Brian, you want to scroll through the rest? So what we did is we mapped them all. You can keep going, Brian, and we've got a descriptor. We've got data about each center. You can scroll up and see the data. Hold on there. Okay. So we were also able to map using another database that's available to one of our consultants, how many visitors these centers receive per year. We also were able to map where the business or the visitors are coming from through a geographic platform that we have. So, Brian, you can keep. So, oh, right there. So there you, oops. Okay, too fast. So there you have like a thermal map that shows if the prune yard's in the middle, where most of their customers are coming from. And you can see on a 5-mile radius, a lot of those customers are coming from San Jose. That's the best position to be in, on the border of the largest city in the county. So we did this for every economic center. And again, this will be a web-based tool that you can access. It's live, and you'll be able to look at it, and we can update the data on an annual, quarterly basis. It was Councilmember Landry who pointed out in our work session that the Hamilton corridor was a very strong generator of sales tax revenue. In fact, is number 2 on the list. But you can see how this works. Okay. So stop the share. Okay. Now hopefully I can get back to my. So I am sharing, right? Share screen. It's got that, but it's not fully up the button there. Okay, there it is, right there. Okay, there we are, back to. So I think you can see on this slide the list of the economic centers, and then you can see to the right a list of the top 25 sales tax generators in the city in alphabetical order. We're not allowed to rank order them. Let me just say about the top 25, that list is not static. It changes all the time, depending on the sales performance of those individual businesses. And they change a lot because the economy changes. So you can see what you see that's missing from this list that may be present in other cities. We don't see auto dealerships. We don't see a lot of box retail. That's because the market is not strong enough either to support those, or they've located elsewhere. But the list is pretty diverse. And again, there's a lot of business and industry represented. Okay, so other highlights of the market condition, and this was one of council's priorities, was to look at the vacancy rates, primarily in retail. And actually our consultant determined that the vacancy rate in retail is very healthy. It's very low, especially for the centers that are the more high profile centers that have anchors. So you don't have to worry. Those centers, when space becomes available, it gets leased pretty fast. The office vacancy is high, but that's pretty normal for the region and for the US as a whole. All urban markets are seeing a huge glut of retail space. That's expected to continue for 3 to 5 years because that's primarily because of the shift towards remote work. People are just not in the offices as much. But if you notice, when you would buy eBay, on more days now, the parking lot is full. So people are coming back to the office. So there is a limit of quality retail space in the city. Again, it gets leased fairly quickly. The portion of the vacant available buildings that are obsolete, the older strip retail space, a lot of the old office space, and they're costly to bring up to code. Most of the businesses that were surveyed through the outreach process said that Campbell is a very good place to do business, primarily because of the access to customers and the access to transportation materials. So it's an easy place to get to. But they did, all of the stakeholder comments across the board, brokers, businesses, property managers, indicated that the zoning permitting process for businesses is very challenging and very costly. And we'll talk about that more. Okay, last, as we looked at the scan, what comes out of the scan are the highlights. These are the things that stood out. The assets, Campbell small town feel. Everyone said it is a great small town, great place to live in, a great place to work, a good place to raise a family, sense of safety, again, location. Challenges, zoning and permitting, capacity and resources of city and partner organizations are limited. and that's true probably in every public sector organization. Limited land, size, and a space available for commercial and industrial development. Opportunities can shorten the time delays for zoning and permitting. We can market, position, and tell our story better. I think Campbell is a unique story, but we just need to tell it more. Focus on growing and retaining existing businesses. That's what the focus is of every community in Silicon Valley. The reality is we don't get a lot of businesses relocating into California or into the region because of the cost of doing business. But what we focus on is growing our own and making sure they can expand. The priorities that the two committees identified. So they looked at all the different assets, challenges, and opportunities, and they were given 2 dots to vote. And what they felt were the standouts were the complexity of permitting and zoning. It's an asset and an opportunity. Focus on existing businesses that have growth potential. That's all the businesses, whether they're in the Dell Avenue area or in the Prune Yard. And leverage small set of tech companies that appear to be incubating in Campbell. And that's what Campbell's really got a strong suit. The small companies that come like ChargePoint Group, where they start up, they grow, got to make sure they can stay in Campbell, because if they can't find the space they need, they go elsewhere. I wanted to give you just a snapshot of what occurred at the meeting of the two committees. So we put up all of the different assets and asked them to vote. They could use their 2 dots on either an asset or a challenge or an opportunity. We didn't restrict them. So the second were in the list of challenges, and you can see a lot of the dots went on the permitting and zoning as a priority. And then the second vote getter was focus on existing businesses that have growth potential. That's not to say that the other items that are shown on assets, challenges, and opportunities aren't important. But again, this is what the two committees, when they looked at it, that's what how they voted. So lastly, now that I've given you a summary of phase 1, we're going to be moving forward into phase 2. We've done a little bit of that with just looking at the assets, challenges, and opportunities. We had a brand story work session a couple of weeks ago with the two committees, and we'll be coming back to council on October 17th for a study session on the brand story and marketing. So council will be able to see what the consultants have come up with in terms of concepts and what they are thinking of in terms of ideas for these 2 important components of the strategy. We'll be looking at existing business development opportunities as we move through into the 3rd phase, key opportunity sites, identifying and monitoring new business trends. I will say that, and you're probably going to agree, that nothing has been as significant in terms of upending everything that we know more than the pandemic. It was a game changer. And we're still, I think, dealing with the outcomes and the after effects of the pandemic. I think they're going to resonate for all economies going forward. And if nothing else, it's taught us nothing is for certain. Nothing is consistent. It all changes, and it can change very quickly. Other key opportunities will be to strengthen our relationships with the brokers. They're the ones that are representing the companies, the businesses that are moving. We're going to monitor retail for new opportunities and also to keep an eye on the existing retailers. We're going to provide some focus on downtown, because Campbell's downtown is a real amenity. But again, it's like anything else, it needs to be revisited, refreshed. Things have to change because that's what happens in our economy. The last thing, we'll look at small business growth, but again, because again, the small business is the backbone of the economy and a community. The last slides you can see, we pulled out of your general plan vision, a lot of the things that align with what came out of the existing condition scan. So you can see small town feel, thriving downtown, employment opportunities, strong sense of community identity. And then your general plan objectives for 2040, again, the same terms resonate. So there is alignment and there's consistency in that. So with that, the consultants and I are happy to take questions. And thank you for the opportunity. I just want to tell you, I've done a lot of these strategies. The positive feeling that people have about Campbell is really genuine, and it's really pervasive. It's a great community.
Thank you, Leslie. Great report.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I know there's a lot of information in that report, so it's nice that you were able to condense it to a shorter version. Any questions of Leslie? Councilmember Furtado?
Thank you. It's a very comprehensive report. I appreciate what you had to say. And I realize, as the city manager has mentioned, this is a very preliminary report, and we're going to have study sessions and additional means to study this. But I wanted to bring up a couple of things. In the council packet for tonight's report, it indicated that initially in the city's RFP, there was a concern for vacancy rates, particularly, well, it said office, but I wanted to focus on retail space in the city. And yet, in the preliminary report, you said the retail was actually doing pretty good. The report that the comprehensive document of phase 1 that we had received back in July said the vacancy rate for retail was around 7%, but tonight's report said it was around 5%. The concern that I have is if you go back to the July report and you look at that report and the data, it says that the retail space, and for that matter, the other spaces that were also outlined, but in the case of the retail space, that was based on total square footage. So that can be skewed a little bit in terms of its interpretation, because when you have very large retail spaces like a Kohl's, like a Home Depot, that is a lot of retail space, and it's included in that. And it seems to me a better picture would be to segregate that into large spaces, medium perhaps, and small spaces, because we are, quote, a small city. Our concern in the RFP originally indicated our concern for retail space vacancies. But what happens is we have potentially a number of smaller retail sites that are vacant. But if you use the percents like 5%, it seems somewhat insignificant. And I'm saying that that piece of data may be erroneously interpreted when you include in the basic data total square footage rather than segregating it out, because the small business retail space, whatever size that might be, it could be relatively higher, and that would be a concern to us because that's kind of a major area.
So good catch, Councilmember. 2 comments on the response, and then I'll probably ask Christine to weigh in because she's our retail consultant. Determining vacancy rates is very difficult. First thing to note is the 4 to 5% that's in my report does not include the large former Fry's Electronics site. As you know, that's a really large site, so you're right. Secondly, when the consultants determined the vacancy rate for our purposes, this report, they did a complete inventory, whereas the data that we've been relying on previously came from another database source largely, and it was not consistent in terms of how the space was accounted for. So this time, the inventory that was conducted or that was prepared for this vacancy report was a comprehensive assessment. And I'm going to let Christine Furstenberg give you more detail on how that was done. But again, that's the problem with vacancy rates. They differ depending on the source. Christine?
Thank you so much, Leslie. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Councilmember Furtado, thank you very much for your question. I think it's a wonderful question because it really clarifies that you, number one, read everything and that you do understand retail. The 7% vacancy rate that we'd identified in the earlier report took into consideration of the Fry's. And because that is such a large vacant space, that makes up for about 2% of the vacancy. Now, how we can work on vacancy, how we look at vacancy is, you might say vacancy and available spaces could be the same thing. There are spaces in Campbell that are small retail spaces that are vacant, but are not necessarily available to lease. They don't have leasing signs on them. They're not being marketed in any fashion that allows the brokerage community to try and put a tenant in there. So there are spaces out there that may not be accounted for, and to segregate everything into large, medium, and small, we can do that. But again, it still may not take into consideration some of those vacant spaces that are really not available. We look at available spaces and spaces that can be put out to market and that can be marketed to retail tenants. Does that answer your question, maybe?
Yes, thank you. One other brief question. I noticed that Hamilton Avenue appears in the data, well, actually 3 times. One of them is the small Hamilton Square, which is in the western part, if I interpret that correctly. But when you say East Hamilton Avenue, isn't Hamilton Plaza subsumed under that? So isn't sort of Hamilton Plaza reported twice, or am I looking at something
No, when
wrong?
we looked at the East Hamilton corridor, I think it's going back to that. That is only, Christine, that was an area that was mapped between Bascom and largely Winchester, right?
Yeah, I don't think Hamilton Square was counted twice, council member, but I will look at that. We identified all of the centers, the main retail centers, and then based on Councilmember Landry's very well commented, we did not pick up the Home Depot and the Kohl's. And so we opened up, they needed to be picked up because they are economic centers. So we changed it a little bit, but I had thought that we only went down to an area before the Hamilton Shopping Center.
What we can do is look at the economic centers link. I can look at that. I'll try to bring it up again.
I will look at the boundaries and get back to you on that.
I think the question specifically was Hamilton Plaza and whether that was being double counted. It doesn't sound like it is, but can you speak to Hamilton Plaza?
I don't believe Hamilton Plaza, it's a center unto itself. Yeah, it's not included in this.
So even though it's on East Hamilton, it was not.
Right.
Oh, it was separated
The
out.
corridor, the corridor that was added, obviously, it was important because of the 2 large format retailers that are in that corridor, and they should be counted.
Vice Mayor Landry?
Yeah, and just so you, Dan, I'll just, the Hamilton Plaza data was provided to us originally separate. And then I had brought up about Kohl's and Home Depot, even though they were across the street and weren't the same complex, and that our precise plan was going to make that a general area. They added it. So I have seen the statistics that Plaza is separate from Hamilton Avenue, and it doesn't quite go to Winchester. I think it ends at Central. But anyways, I did see them separated. They aren't double counted.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Permitting and zoning came up quite a lot as one of the biggest complaints. But how often does other cities also have? I mean, I hear all the time from developers about permitting and zoning. So I don't know that in and of ourselves we are separate from what everybody else has experienced. I mean, what
most likely not. Council member, I've worked in probably 15 different jurisdictions over my career, and it's probably the most prevalent complaint. But again, it doesn't really matter whether you're in a large club. Okay, the reality, what we need to focus on is this is our club. Okay, and this is something we need to fix because we need to be able to accommodate businesses either that are existing and just want to grow and expand, or new ones that want to come in. Personally, since I've been here, I've had to agree with 3 businesses that they need to go look elsewhere for a location because they could not accommodate the timeline and that it would take to get a conditional use permit when it should have been a clear allowed use. So that's just my own anecdotal information. But again, you're right. And Christine can attest to that. Other cities have the same permit requirements of conditional use permit or a permit for every change of use or every new use. And again, it doesn't matter how many of us are in the club. It's just we need to worry about our own place, right, Christine? I think you've dealt with as many cities as I have, if not more.
I would add on a question to that. How much of it is staff delay time that they're too busy, and how much is it just that our process has those dates and those deadlines? Is it evenly split? Is it more because of the timelines, or is it because of staff availability?
I'll let Christine answer that. It's actually a third leg on that stool. Christine?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Landry. I do not think, well, there are staff delays, but those staff delays are very recently required by the state. So I don't recall exactly what year it was passed, but there was a law passed in Sacramento that changed how your planning departments handle applications. So it used to be that they would handle an application as it came in. So if a commercial application came in, they would process it and roll it down all through all the processes, and then a housing application came in and that came behind the commercial application. What's happened recently is that the housing applications are now taking precedence. So if there's a commercial application for a new business that wants to open in retail, your planning staff, to my understanding, has to actually set aside that commercial application, and they have to pick up and process the housing application because that's state law, and they're mandated by law to do that. So what has been happening, and I believe it went into effect maybe in 21. What's been happening is that they will respond to a commercial application within the 30 days, but oftentimes it's a limited response, maybe a minimal response, because they are busy managing the housing applications. I do want to address a little bit about, where you stand. Every city right now in the Bay Area is having problems. Everyone, you are in a big club, but I also run a brokerage company, and so I represent tenants in and around in the Bay Area, in and around Campbell, and it's a little bit longer in Campbell, and I think it's because a couple of things. You used to have, until this year, you had a requirement that a conditional use permit, a CUP, conditional use permit, was required for almost any change of use. Now that's been changed this year in the zoning changes that were done around June. But that, I think, contributed a lot. I don't know another city that has that in the Bay Area. So if every change of use required a conditional use permit, that really caused a great drag on the timing. So that has changed. That's been wonderful. But you still have a predominance of uses that require a conditional use permit. That is a little more unusual. Most cities don't have as many uses that require a conditional use permit as you do.
And also, I think to clarify in terms of the state changes in the state law, what's happened is that the time to process those applications for housing, as Rob says, the shop clock is shorter. So the planners don't have as much time, so they have to respond on those applications. So that means they have less time, to deal with another application. It's not that they deliberately want to set aside and prioritize applications. They do take them as they come in, And I believe they deal with them as quickly as they can. But again, the process is complicated. Every time I try to check, because we haven't made the final changes in terms online, I try to check the zoning and what's required for a business in this location. I feel very uncertain. And so I always end up saying to the applicant, let me check with a planner, or you make an appointment to check with a planner, but don't sign a lease until you have confirmation that that use doesn't require a permit, or that use is going to require a permit, and how long estimated time is it going to take, all right, to get through that process. I've had situations, where the brokers were not aware of it. The property managers were not aware that they needed a permit. And so the business went ahead, right, thinking that they were all clear, and then they got tagged. But that's changed a lot because, as Christine says, there has been a cleanup, if you will. But again, it could be more, there could be more clarity and more streamlining, I think, in terms of what's required. But again, I really believe staff makes every effort given the workload. It's just that they don't control it.
One last question, and I might be to Rob. How many incomplete letters, and like, I know being in the industry, cities now are being very firm on whether the application is complete or not. Is part of this problem that people are submitting incomplete applications, getting sent back. I mean, right, you could do that 3 or 4 times and then the developer's complaining, you denied my permit. Well, you weren't complete. So I don't know if we're tracking statistics on that, because that would certainly help us to understand, is it the developer who's not doing the good job, or is it our staff kind of thing? I think Rob understands my question.
Sure. Rob Eastwood, Community Development Director. Of course, we could have a conversation on this. It goes a long time. We don't, Campbell, to my knowledge, when I viewed our metrics, we don't keep specific metrics on that. We do keep metrics on bin time, how long it takes to go through the process. We're still evolving those. And oftentimes it's a myriad of issues. It could be it's deemed incomplete multiple times, and the developer, staff will tell the developer or the applicant what to submit, and the applicant just wants to move things along, and there's a communication gap. And oftentimes, as Leslie mentioned and Christine mentioned, under state law, we are required, as per shot clock, we have 30 days to review an application. So most of that bin time, that waiting time, is actually usually on the applicant's end. It's still frustrating that they're probably working on the application and needing to submit it. I'll give you my personal observation. We have a very small staff, probably staff ratio per population and revenue. It's one of the smallest. And if you look at the other 15 cities in Santa Clara County, it is one of the smallest. However, the staff is extremely dedicated to customer service. A lot of the issues have had to do with code complexities. And one of the legacies of Campbell is PD zoning. We had this conversation with council when we had the housing updates. Most of the city was PD zone, which shrink wraps and has very specific conditions on each property. So every time there's a change in use, in the past, you would have to go through a process that is 4 to 6 to 2 months just to change from one retail use to another. And as Christine and Leslie said, lease agreements would just fail because people didn't have time to wait. When we did the cleanup to the general plan zoning ordinance back in April, a lot of that we did clean out. Our observation, there is still a fair amount of dead wood in there where we require conditional uses on things such as medical uses, some benign uses, which in many other cities are not conditional uses. And so we are looking at that. The Planning Commission was interested in this. They've actually created they've created a subcommittee to look into the uses and work with staff. And we might bring to you later in the year with the economic development plan updates and recommended changes. Again, there's still areas where I think Campbell, if you just compare with industry standard on what's a conditional use or not, we are still requiring a lot of conditional uses. So that is something to take a look at.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm sorry, Kelly. Councilmember Spazzola.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can save this for study session, but I was really curious about the 30% vacant office space, and that's relatively normal. And I understand, especially since the pandemic and people working from home more often, but like other than a vacant parcel tax, like are there any other like methods, policies that cities might be able to use to encourage, reducing that vacancy rate.
What my understanding, what I know about vacant parcel taxes that have been implemented in other cities is that they have not yielded the results that were expected. In my opinion, it's a very punitive approach. Yes, there are property owners that sit on property for a long time who are not interested in, it's not that they don't want to find a tenant, it's just that they are not willing to provide dollars for tenant improvements. Their buildings need a lot of code work, and they're not willing to either cover or share in that cost, so that renders their space less desirable, okay? Again, I think that's the vacancy tax is something that has been used more prevalently by other cities. In the old days of redevelopment, where we had a lot more flexibility, there were a lot more things, tools that we had that we could offer to property owners and businesses in terms of incenting them to upgrade their properties. I don't know if you had this in Campbell, but it was in a lot of communities, they had redevelopment money for unreinforced masonry buildings. And so that's very expensive to upgrade a building. And so redevelopment could bring in dollars to help with that. Again, I think the thing that comes to mind, and I'll ask Christine or even Audrey to weigh in because they work in more communities at this time than I do. The one thing I think is to make sure that the process to get a business in, that the city, we're not the obstacle or the stumbling block. Okay, so that a business can get into a space quickly due to permitting. Okay, that's not an issue. Then they have to deal with the fact if they're a very small business going into a strip center, typically the strip center space, the owners don't have the dollars to assist with upgrades, especially with code. And so the burden falls on the small business. In a high profile center, the ones like Hamilton Plaza, they have a lot more money available to assist the tenants. Okay, and like recent ADA changes, requirements, sometimes they'll share or they'll cover the cost of that, depending on, the kind of lease they have with the tenant. So there aren't many tools that we have. And a lot of the buildings, again, are obsolete. And a lot of them, if they're large sites, are probably targets for redevelopment, probably housing. So that's the status we're in now.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no additional questions, I'll open it up to the public for comment. Anyone in the chamber wish to speak? And I don't see anybody online.
I do want to thank Ken of the chamber and thank Amy Taylor of the Downtown Campbell Business Association. They've been very generous, as many others have, giving their time to serve on the advisory committee. And it's been very helpful for the consultants to have them as a resource. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. So I'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Lopez.
Well, I also wanted to start off by thanking Ken, and thanks for sticking around, by the way, and Amy, who left just a little while ago, but really such a depth of knowledge and experience and diversity of experience across that advisory board. So we're really fortunate to be able to draw upon it. This being at this point in the process, more for sharing information and relatively early on in the process, I don't have much to add, but I do just want to say, being a part of the Economic Development Subcommittee, just give my strongest support and appreciation for the work that the team is doing. Just in case some folks aren't aware of this, the team that's working on this have the approach of they only work on one city, one project at a time. So it's not like one of those cookie cutter firms where they kind of have a template and they're just slotting you in. Really, the attention and the depth, I've been amazed at every step. Just the quality of information that you're getting. I mean, this gives you a glimpse into it, but I appreciate the many hours of meetings and the even more time that the advisory board has spent, and Leslie, all your follow-ups. So I'm just really appreciative. I'm very hopeful for this process. I think it's gonna open up a variety of avenues that we could go, and I think the team is fully aware of both, the possibilities and the limitations of the process, and you always want to have an eye on both of them, because those are always factors. But I'm just really excited for where we are. I'm excited for it to come back later for more of that discussion. But I really couldn't have more confidence in the team, Leslie and Christine, everyone working on this. Really are all doing great work. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Landry.
Yeah, I would just like to ditto what Councilmember Lopez said. Audrey and Christine and the other people in the team have just awesome. They're shining. I just see this wonderful professional job that they're doing. The wealth of depth of information that they have given has just been tremendous. What were we reading? 250 pages or something at once. So I just really appreciate you guys. Very professional. Just tons of data. It's really opened my eyes to kind of the whole economic situation, and like this 30% vacancy in office, but what can we really do about it? There's not a lot we can do about it. The permitting and zoning issue, because that was so prominent, there were so many dots on there. I think it behooves us to start tracking incomplete letters. And I don't know if you guys know what the incomplete letter, basically you submit your permit and it's not complete, and you get a letter and say that the clock hasn't started yet, you're incomplete. And that developers complain. What do you mean my letter was incomplete? What do you mean? And then they go out and complain, well, it took them 30 days. Well, no, it took you 30 days to get your drawing prepared. So I think it would help us to have this data to go along with this, so that for me or going out to the community, I can say, well, yes, permitting is a problem, blah, 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 but be more complete, turn your information in. So I think that could be part of it. Getting rid of the CUPs and the PDs, cleaning that up. I think our perception is definitely going to be changing. These things have helped expedite projects that were not expedited before. And we're not seeing the true repercussions of that yet, or the benefit of that yet, because we don't have the data. It's only been, 5 months, less than 5 months. So that's very optimistic from my perspective, is that we are cleaning it up. We are hearing, we are listening. And you guys have done a great job, and Leslie, special thanks to you. And I'd also like to say great job with Ken and Amy. You even brought in other cities. I forget, I think it was Cupertino. And
I brought in 2 colleagues from San Mateo and Mountain View. Mountain View has gone through a strategy process. They're just finishing theirs. But I thought it was important to have the perspective from 2 peer groups of mine and cities, so that they could weigh in, and they've done a good job of validating, and also, letting us know what's real, right? And that we're not alone, that other cities have the same challenges, and here's how they deal with it. So I think that shared experience and information has been really helpful to the process.
And I think that's great that you brought them in, and there were comments that they did make as part of the process that we're doing this, like you said, what they have been going through. So it was very helpful for me to have outside cities participate. And I don't want to forget that we did have a residential survey as part of this. I know I sent that out to as many people as I could. And so there has been feedback, not just from our businesses, but from our residential people that live, the people that are living in Campbell. So great job so far, and I'm looking forward to the study session.
Thank you.
Councilmember Furtado, any other comments? Zola?
Yeah, just wanted to echo what everyone just said. This is really exciting stuff. It is one of my favorite things since I've been on council, is looking at this data and coming to conclusions from it, like, oh yeah, we do really need that. Like just tonight when you're talking about the well, not only just keeping businesses here, that seems like, well, of course you want to keep your businesses here, but the growth potential of your talking about startups and like keep the startups here, and as they grow, hopefully they can turn into real monsters. And then it's like, that's a Campbell, like, business that remember, oh, everyone knows, like, Amazon.com. What if Amazon started right here in Campbell, So I really liked that little detail, or something I didn't even think of, so very much appreciate. I'm very excited about all the data that's going to come from this.
Thank you. And I want to echo what's been said. And again, it's a great report, very comprehensive, and I appreciate you drilling it down and providing some key highlights. And obviously, my eyes are wide awake now, seeing some of the issues that we need to deal with, specifically with the permitting process. One of the things that you didn't touch on that was in the report was the website review, and it sounds like we have some deficiencies in our information that we provide on the website. So that I'll look forward to some additional discussion at the study session on that, and
As a
where we
result,
can improve.
Mayor, as a result of that assessment or that scan, staff is already underway working with Leticia, working with Ken. We've already organized subgroups, and we are making the corrections and changes. And that assessment really helped jumpstart that, because nobody had the time to really, or probably the experience, right, expertise to go through the website and catch all the different things that needed to be changed and corrected. So that piece of information was terrific. So we're already underway.
And it would seem to me that would be part of, included in the economic strategy going forward, that we do an annual or quarterly or a 6-month update regularly to make sure that our information is fresh. So I do appreciate that part of the report as well. Thank you. And with that, I don't think we need a motion. We're just here to accept the report. And thank you. And thank you to our consultants, Christine and Audrey. Really appreciate all the work that's gone into this.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have consultants that kind of become part of our community and really take ownership of our small town and things that are important to our council and our residents. So thank you very much.
And it was great to hear how much they've enjoyed visiting Campbell.
So we have, I just want to do a check-in with the council. We have 2 more items. Do we want to plow through and before? Okay, I think they're pretty. Okay, we can skip 22. So the last item will be the, excuse me, not 22. The next item is council committee reports. Item 22, accept resignations of Renee Small and Matt Schroeder from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, BPAC. And our presenter is Andrea Sanders, our city clerk.
I will be very brief. So we've had 2 bicycle and pedestrian committee members resign recently. Our normal process would be that we would advertise the vacancy and recruit for the rest of that term. Recent years, recruitment efforts have proven quite difficult. We're just not getting the number of applications. We've had to extend recruitments past their initial term to allow for sufficient applications to come in. So since these 2 resigned members, their term is expiring in August of 2024, my recommendation is to recruit for not only the short-term vacancy, but the additional full term that would start in 2024 for a full term expiring in 2028.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of council? And any comments from the public? And nobody online, so I'll bring it back to council for discussion and or motion. Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, I just wanted to make some comments of how much I appreciate the service for both of them. They're listening, but either way, I hope we communicate that. And just sorry to see them go, but really appreciate all their time volunteer.
Thank you. Any other comments? Motion?
I would just say that I appreciate your comments, Andrea. The fact that I think we should just go ahead and follow her advice and recruit for a position that will last not only the short term, but a full term as well.
Is that a motion?
Motion. Accept the resignations of the two individuals that have tendered their resignation from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and that we move ahead, and to thank them for their service appropriately, as we always do, and to move ahead with the recommendation of the city clerk to recruit for an extended term that will consist of the short term plus a full term after that.
I'll second.
Thank you. There's been a motion by Councilmember Furtado and a second by Councilmember Lopez to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Scazola.
Aye.
Councilmember Furtado.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Landry.
Aye.
Mayor Bybee.
Aye. So I've had a request to defer item 23, council committee reports, to the next meeting unless somebody has a burning issue that needs to get addressed tonight. Okay, does everybody concur with that? Okay, great, thank you. So I'll adjourn the meeting at 10:21. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.